So back in the early 2000s, that 6-year stretch of Final Destination 1, 2, and 3 was a crazy time period in the horror genre, full of so many ups and downs. So let's talk about it. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Mad Blood, and today I'm going to be talking about kind of the rise and fall of Final Destination 1, 2, and 3, which is a 6-year time span in that franchise, which in a lot of ways was kind of that bridge between the style of 90s horror movies and the 2000s, which gave us some of the most memorable moments in horror history, some generational trauma. You know what I'm talking about, but also at the same time, those three movies definitely have some flaws, but really a timeline where I say to myself, is this kind of the definition of a guilty pleasure franchise? But also has some of those moments where I think to myself, what the hell are these people doing? All right, so let's just jump right into it and start off by talking about the original Final Destination from 2000, Flight 180, right? So the original concept for this movie started as a spec script by writer and creator of this story, Jeffrey Riddick. He originally wrote it for the X-Files, basically just in order to get a TV agent at the time, but eventually one of his buddies at New Line convinced him, like, hey man, you should probably write this into a full feature-length script because I think you got a little something here. And yeah, this movie is pre-Saw. This is pre-Hostel. This is pre the Texas Chainsaw remake. So like I mentioned just a second ago, it's kind of that bridge between the 90s horror movies and the 2000 horror movies, especially when it comes to the gore, because obviously as the 2000s went along, this movie kind of started a little bit of that wave of like, all right, the gore is just going to go completely nuts in that era, especially in particular. There's also something about the look of this movie that I love, the grain in it, the lighting in this movie. It doesn't look like a 90s movie. It doesn't really even look like a 2000s movie. It's kind of a blend between the two. I don't know. There's just something about it that I just like the look of it. And man, of course, this movie is just a pure 2000s time capsule. I feel like I could just smell the Abercrombie Fierce Cologne through the screen. I was a teenager during this time, so that's always going to hit a little different for me just because of my age. But I really do feel like, man, just James Wong does an incredible job creating just the eeriness as this movie kind of kicks off. Everything is just kind of happening in these small, subtle little ways that are kind of normal, but also create kind of this eeriness and this atmosphere to this, especially this opening scene in particular. And I'd imagine if you have a very basic fear of flying like a lot of people do, this kind of puts you in the head of people like that. You're looking around, you're seeing like, okay, the wing looks a little worn there. There's a little tape over there. That looks a little out of shape. There's a screw that's loose there. I'm sure people who have a fear of flying kind of just look at these things and definitely feel that anxiety. And I feel like the way this is shot, the way that it's all filmed and acted, and just how it all goes down in this opening, I feel that. I don't have a fear of flying personally, but you can kind of get that sense right away. And yeah, of course, this movie has the advantage of being the first movie in the franchise. There's something to be said about that. There's just this mystery around, okay, there's got to be a reason why these people survived. Like, I feel like as this story plays along, and especially as the franchise plays along, there's going to be a big story about just kind of like, is it fate or can you change your fate? And I want to talk about Todd's death in this movie for just a minute. So right off the bat, we see that first moment in the franchise, which for Final Destination fans like me is kind of the universal, oh shit moment. There is something that is about to go down, so you better buckle up tight. It's the water, the drip, drip, drip from Todd's toilet there that just lets you know, all right, this is about to happen. And it's the first moment where we see that in this entire franchise. And really though, Todd's death, man, I mean, it is one of the least gory deaths in this entire franchise. And it's definitely not one of those deaths that I think about right away when I think about this franchise. But to me, it is one of the most intense deaths, without question, in this entire franchise. And especially because this is the first movie, you don't know what's gonna happen here. You don't really know this guy's fate in particular. So there's a part of you that does kind of think, okay, maybe he'll pull this off. Maybe he'll get through this craziness that we're seeing on screen. But it is just a wild death. As that wire is tightening, his eyes just morph completely red. We're cutting to his dad, just basically steps away, falling asleep in his chair. And also, you're like, okay, this is definitely going to be painted as a suicide. But we're pretty much the only ones in that moment that know the real truth. So there's just kind of that push and pull emotion of everything happening. And yeah, it's a really intense scene. Definitely has me white knuckling. Then, of course, we really do get that confirmation after this death that there is something different going on here. There's definitely something supernatural if you haven't been convinced up to this point, because he dies and then the liquid just kind of goes back to the place that it was in, showing no signs of evidence or foul play or anything else going on. Like, oh, maybe he just slipped. He didn't end up killing himself. No, there's something more sinister going on here that, for me, makes me very, very interested in watching the rest of this movie to figure out what the hell happened here. Why? Why is it targeting these people? Why did he have the premonition? What happened? And yeah, this is by far the least gory movie in this entire franchise, but to me, I really like the deaths in this movie. I feel like just with the tension and the anticipation of all of it, the atmosphere, I really, really like it. I like the way that it's pulled off. And yes, of course, this is a movie from the early 2000s, so there is that chance that they're going to overuse the corny, just janky CGI that a lot of early 2000s movies did, with the kills in particular, but they don't in this movie. They're kind of subtle, but also gory at the same time. There's just something about it, the tension and the anticipation, I think, that are pulled off really, really well in this movie, despite the fact that it is, without question, the least gory Final Destination movie. Now, of course, is the cast in this movie flawless or the greatest cast in movie history or anything like that? No, not at all. But I do think this cast is really fun, especially for a movie like this. In particular, Devon Sawa, I just think he does a great job in this movie playing this kid where you can clearly tell this stuff is definitely weighing on him pretty heavily. There's kind of this mix that you can see within him, this sadness of all these people that he's lost. Plus, at the same time, he's also just like, man, this makes no sense. I'm trying to piece together the clues and the puzzle, and I just can't figure it out. I saw it happen, literally before it happened, but he also can't tell anyone because obviously they'll just think he's nuts. So he's trying to figure out what he needs to do, and you can just kind of see that inner battle with him. But yeah, I think Devon Sawa was just great in this movie. And after they visit Todd's body in the morgue, I can just see how perfect Tony Todd is for this movie in particular. There's just kind of that carryover from the greatness that is Candyman. Rest in peace, Tony Todd. I mean, come on, the great voice. Also in Candyman, he was kind of that like dark, eternal being, whereas in this movie, he's a guy working in a morgue, seemingly, on the surface, but you can tell just from this first interaction with him, there's definitely something more to this character, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see him more as this franchise goes along. Also, just a hilarious line from Tony Todd. You don't even want to fuck with that Mac Daddy. And yeah, speaking of deaths in this movie, the second person to die after the plane crash is Carter's girlfriend, which is definitely one of those moments that gives you a little glimpse of the craziness and the gore that we'll see more of course, later on in the franchise, but she gives us that whole thing of, well, we're breaking up, and if you want to keep on fighting, then you can just drop dead. And you're just like, oh my God. It's one of those kills in a movie theater setting in particular that after like the sound effects and the music stops, you're going to hear people in the theater say, just stuff like, holy shit. And they're laughing in their seat, looking at each other. It is one of those moments, without question. This movie also in particular is kind of that story like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Nobody is going to believe these kids. They're kind of on their own journey. Even though the cops are next to them, the parents are next to them, they're on their own in a lot of ways, especially in this movie, because in the second movie, there are some characters like Clear helping them along the way, giving them some of those answers. But Devon Sawa's character and some of the other characters in this movie in particular, especially, are on their own. They're trying to figure this out. And that's just a journey that I really, really enjoy. Also, you have that layer as well of Devon Sawa's character in this movie. He keeps trying harder and harder and harder to prevent these things from happening as he's figuring out what is kind of happening here. But also, that's starting to make him look very, very guilty, because now he's starting to get caught at the scenes of these crimes. He's got his fingerprints on stuff, and that adds a little extra layer to this whole story too. I also love how Sean William Scott's character, it seems like, just rides around this town all day, all night. It seems like everywhere on his bike. Is he kind of supposed to be like Crazy Ralph from Friday the 13th? I also love how when his head gets cut off, Alex afterwards is just kind of game planning the next move. There's no reaction really at all, no remorse about this dude's head literally being chopped in half right in front of you. And I get it, he's starting to be a little desensitized to what's happening here, but still kind of funny. There's almost no reaction from him at all. One thing interesting also to think about towards the end of this movie is after Alex saves Clear's life, he gets electrocuted. He clearly, his heart, it seems like, has stopped beating. That's at least what the cop tells us. And then it cuts to white before we cut to 6 months later. They're getting on the plane. They're going to Paris. So what happens after that? Is it reality? Is he dead? What's really going on there? And one thing I feel like is cool about the first Final Destination movie is it is the one movie in the franchise, without question, you could show to somebody who has a hard time with gore. They could maybe get through this one because, like I said, it's the least gory movie in this franchise. It's more about tension. It's more about the atmosphere. It's more about the anticipation. Like, I feel like I could show this movie potentially to my mom, and yeah, it would be hilarious as hell to see her reactions to everything happening on the screen, but it is the one movie in this franchise that you could potentially show to somebody who's just not really into this kind of stuff. And yeah, it does feel kind of weird to have that final kill of the movie happen off screen. Don't really love that, but all in all, the original Final Destination, I mean, man, I have so much fun with this movie. Like I said, kind of the great blend of 90s horror and 2000s horror, kind of the bridge. It's gory, but it's not, over the top and crazy. A little bit more focused, like I said, on tension and atmosphere and that buildup, which I think James Wan just does a great job with in this movie. And yeah, it's a lot of fun despite its flaws. And of course, you know what's coming next. Final Destination 2 from 2003. And this movie is kind of the definition of a movie given an entire generation trauma about something we never even experienced in real life. I mean, come on, don't lie to me, guys. Every time you see a logging truck or some sort of a truck carrying long, crazy things hanging out of the back of that truck, you change lanes every single time if it's in front of you. You do. We all do it. So technically, this movie takes place 1 year after the explosion of Flight 180, and we also find out the fate of Alex, Devon Sawa's character from the first movie, who apparently, because according to this news article, he eventually died because of a falling brick accident. And right away in this movie, I do like this intro with the newscaster interviewing this guy. It kind of ties together the events from the first and the second movie, because I'm the type of person that feels like if you have a movie, the original that I consider a great movie or a movie that is just really, really damn fun, unless you're gonna go full like kind of anthology route, continue that story. Tie those pieces together. Give us some of the characters returning from the first movie if you can. Just give us some answers from that first movie. Don't answer all of the questions, but give us a little bit along the way, which I think is really, really important for a sequel of a movie that a lot of people consider a really damn fun time, like I do. It also continues that story of, all right, you got to kind of question just these everyday occurrences, things that you might not notice. Start noticing them, because they do potentially have a huge ripple effect on how just your whole life goes and your fate just in general. I know for me in particular, I was just thinking about this the other day. I was like, damn, man, a lot of the stupid, absolutely dumb things I used to do as a teenager, how did I even survive? But hey, I guess I'm here today. It's kind of a ripple effect. And like I mentioned a second ago, anytime a movie can literally change the way you look at something for the rest of your entire life, there's something to be said about that makes that movie or that moment in particular pretty iconic. I mean, of course, in Jaws, that made an entire generation afraid of the ocean, afraid of the deep water. Now, obviously, this movie is not on that level by any means, but logging trucks? I mean, come on. But to me personally, I think the whole buildup and the anxiety of this big opening premonition scene is just great. I think it's pulled off really, really well. You got the cops' kind of coffee cup that's sort of spilling. And the road, it's kind of wet, but it's also sunny at the same time. The girl's leaves and the windshield start to catch on fire. The main character's car is leaking transmission fluid. Just to me, I feel like my anxiety with this scene is just building and building and building. Like, they aren't really making it obvious what's about to happen here, because, I mean, they only show the logging truck just for a split second but I think the buildup in this scene is really damn good. And I mean, come on, the gore in this scene to me is a lot of fun. I mean, you got the cop, the log goes through his head, sending his head out the back of his fucking car like a damn rocket. There's so much gore, and just I love how it seems like every single car is wired with just multiple sticks of dynamite. Every time they run into anything, they just completely explode. And a little bit later on in the movie, after the premonition and all that kind of stuff, I think the ladder kill is a fun one too. This guy just got done winning the lottery, so you have that angle of it as well. But there's so much anxiety in this moment, which is something I'll mention a lot in this franchise just in general. But he's got his hand in the disposal, you know, the stove is catching on fire and all of that. And, you know, on top of it, it's the same guy from that horrendous pile of dog shit movie, I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about, so you'll recognize him from that movie. But yeah, I think it's just a fun kill, and the fake out of the ladder, like, oh, okay, he's safe. Oh, no, wait, no. Just kidding. I mean, the dentist scene too, they play on that whole angle of, come on, everybody hates the dentist, and they make you really feel like you're at the dentist with this kid. And it's also, it gives you a lot of anxiety too in that scene. And then that kid, I mean, you thought the first movie wasn't that gory. This is also one of those kills like we've already seen up to this point in Final Destination 2, where there's so much gore. This kid gets absolutely just crushed by that piece of glass. By the way, who decided the cop's apartment was the best place to meet up? This guy has like decorative spears on his wall. He's got like canoes hanging from the ceiling. This seems like one of the worst possible places you can meet up in a movie like this. To be honest, Clear's room, the padded room, why didn't you guys just meet there? And one of the most memorable deaths in this entire movie to me is that girl when she gets killed by the airbag. They're like, oh shit, did we just do that? And then her cigarette falls, starts the fire, blows up the news van, which sends the barbed wire fence through the coke addict guy. Just a crazy scene with so many different things going on that I think is pulled off really well. And yeah, this is the second movie in the franchise, so they do kind of have to add a little something here. And they add this angle of, okay, maybe new life can basically ruin Death's design. And while all of that is happening, I enjoy how we're kind of cutting back and forth between the different people trying to beat Death. You got the guy in the hospital, you got the woman trying to give birth. I feel like it's pretty intense. But oh yeah, psych, just kidding. The pregnant lady didn't actually die in the premonition. So what needs to happen here is Kimberly actually needs to die and then be resuscitated. And of course, this is Final Destination. We can't just have a corny little happy ending. We cut to the barbecue scene. Brian! And then Brian, this kid, absolutely just explodes. Like, what a great Final Destination ending. The arm falls on the dinner table. It's just hilarious. But yeah, Final Destination 2, definitely some ups and downs in this movie. I do think the acting in Final Destination 2 and the cast in general is worse than Final Destination 1 in some ways. But I mean, the premonition scene, the logging truck, all of that iconic. So many great kills. They're definitely pushing the envelope as far as the gore goes in Final Destination 2, giving us that glimpse that it's just going to keep going and going as the franchise moves along. But yeah, definitely one of the best movies in this franchise, without question. Just some of the greatest deaths in this entire franchise. Arguably just the most fun story just in general, but overall just a really, really damn fun movie, Final Destination 2. But of course, moving right along, we're going to talk about Final Destination 3. From 2006. So this movie takes place about 5 years after the events in that first movie. You got James Wong, the director of the first movie, coming back to direct this one. And a major theme in this movie is definitely control, which you, in the premonition, will clearly understand. And yeah, basically, this is the roller coaster digital camera movie in this franchise. And I'm just glad it finally paid off for somebody carrying around that big-ass digital camera in their back pocket like I did throughout many points in the 2000s, without a doubt. Paid off for them. I'm not really sure if it did for me, but those things were huge, man. You guys remember carrying those things around? We didn't even have iPhones back then. That was the only way you could document all the shenanigans. And I feel like this opening roller coaster scene is a long one, but it definitely pays off for me. It kind of doesn't even climax until like 15 minutes into the movie. And like I already mentioned a second ago, that feeling of not being in control. I mean, How could you ever just put that in a more perfect way than being on a roller coaster where you're just strapped in? Good luck. There literally is nothing you can do. And I think the way that James Wong pulls that off in this particular moment is great. Just the shots of it, it really does feel like I'm on the ride. I mean, hell, on top of that, there's usually like a 16-year-old kid operating the ride. Your life is literally in the hands of this kid and the people who maybe maintain this ride, I guess, on a regular basis. Who knows? But yeah, you have completely lost control. And yeah, rightfully so. A lot of people, when they think about this franchise or this movie in particular, they think about the silly characters, the kind of frat boy script. But I really don't think this movie in particular and some of the other movies in this franchise get enough credit for how well some of these scenes are shot. And I think this roller coaster scene just in general doesn't get enough credit for that. I think it's pulled off really damn well. And like the second movie, this movie also has some of the most iconic and some of the most memorable deaths in this entire franchise. Hell, probably in horror movie history. The tanning bed kill. I mean, what a perfect thing to use against the audience during that era. Who didn't know a million people that went to tanning beds all the time, especially if you were the right age during this particular era, which I was. But yeah, a brutal, absolutely just memorable kill. That great transitioning from their burning tanning beds to their caskets. Also, love that. That's great. The jock getting his head crushed in the gym. All those fun little fake outs that do kind of make you think, oh, maybe he did defeat death. But a fun scene. The Home Depot Lowe's scene as well. All the stuff that goes down with that, with the nail gun and all of that, the fake outs, the tension, the anxiety of it all. Even that drive-through kill. All of us have been in a drive-through, so they use that against us. But that kill, man, that is a brutal kill. It is juicy. The sound effects are crunchy. And yeah, it's just a nasty, bloody kill. Just some really fun deaths in this movie. Now, I will say the way Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character is written in this movie is probably a tad whiny at times for me. Yes, it is very believable, but still a little bit whiny at times. But regardless, I actually think she's one of the best characters in this entire franchise. Really great actress. I've always been a big fan of her work. Great seeing her in this franchise. I also think Ryan Merriman's character also is one of the most underrated characters in this franchise as well, and one of my favorite characters in the franchise also. I also think that character Ian is kind of perfect for a movie like this, for a franchise like this. He's that kind of emo kid who's smart, but like very, very pessimistic at the same time. He's cracking jokes, but I just think fits really, really well into a movie like this. I also think the ending of this movie is pretty fun at this McKinley tricentennial thing, this big event for the town. A lot of great vibes there going on. And then after all that madness, we cut to 5 months later. And these flash forwards, for me personally, I really enjoy them. I look forward to them. It gives us a little something after all the craziness to look forward to at the end of this movie. So the characters are now in this metro and all the shit goes down like you would expect in a Final Destination movie. And from somebody who's ridden a metro many, many, many times in his life, this is a moment that I do personally enjoy. And yeah, Final Destination 3 definitely has some questionable moments, some questionable acting without question. Not the greatest script or the greatest storyline ever made in movie history by any means. Lots of ups and downs in this movie, but great all-time classic kills, a great premonition. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, one of my favorite characters in this franchise, just a lot of fun. And I feel like Final Destination 3 is pretty much like the Final Destination movie for me to watch in the summertime, especially in a month like July. But there you go, everybody. That is the rise and fall of Final Destination 1, 2, and 3. First of all, I want to thank my patrons and my channel members. Thank you so much for the support. Really do appreciate it, guys. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. Final Destination Bloodlines coming out really soon, so a ton of Final Destination content coming on the channel. But again, everybody, thanks so much for watching. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. But my name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.